I've been known to solve some hard problems over the years, things that were unlikely to be solved. I'll have to tell you stories about that one day, not today. I have been advocating that you take all the seeds you can get your hands on and save them, especially the free ones. And when we talked about the butternut squash, not too many people watched that video. I did make sure I opened the squash before I cooked it and scooped out the interior part of the squash. Now, I had intended to stick this in the freezer, but I just took a clear glass bowl because I was in a hurry and scooped out the interior cavity of the butternut squash. And something was interesting to me that happened. I'm trying to show this to you as best I can. You can kind of see this. This is the innards of one cavity of one butternut squash. It's the tan bell-shaped squash. And what I found was that I neglected this and I thought it might mold sitting there. But what happened was it dried really nicely. And I have two lumps, one here and one here, side by side. And it's a clump of dried seeds and dried, what do you call that stuff? Goop, dried goop. And then there's little pieces all over you can see. They are so dry that they could be scraped now out of this, lifted and scraped out of this bowl and put into an envelope and labeled. And it really is not, it's nice to separate it from the goop. I'm trying to get some in my hand here. I don't know if I can get my hand in front of the camera. Let's see. Can't really see that very well. There's quite a few seeds there, but you can't see it very well. Let's try the light. Let's see it a little bit better. Got a fruit fly on my nose. Fruit fly. So at any rate, these are plenty dry enough to store. There's two connected. They're plenty dry enough to store. You could put them right into an envelope at this point in time. And our weather was not rainy. I don't think it was rainy during that time, but they dried just fine. So you got these two clumps of goop. Now, these seeds are not going to come off of there too easily. They could be broken off, but if it came time to plant, and you needed to plant because you needed the food, you could easily just fill this bowl with an inch of lukewarm water. It wouldn't even have to be lukewarm. It could be cold water. And these would come back apart again. Sometimes I used to soak my seeds overnight to give them a head start and then plant from that point on. So the reason for making this video is because this was easier than I thought it would be. I just laid it aside and ignored it, and it did what it needed to do. And now these seeds are bone dry, and I don't even have to put them in the freezer. I can just put them in a envelope and mark them butternut squash. So the goop is not a problem at all. Now, what was I going to say about that? We did get a look at a whole bunch of Hubbard squash the other day, and they were anywhere from football size to like that. But again, that Hubbard squash is really good whipped, and I guess it looks better with a light on. The Hubbard squash is really good whipped, and I think I'm going to get my hands on some butternut squash seed, Hubbard squash seeds to have in storage, just because, you know, it would be nice just to know that if you had a large group of people that you wanted to provide for, if for any reason your food supply should be interrupted, it would be really nice to know that you could grow a quantity of food. Now, this is kind of a continuation, and I'm over 4 minutes, so I don't want to go on and on, but this is kind of a continuation of the last video about free cooking fuel, which is not ideal fuel. The stuff you pay for is still cheap. The paraffin is cheap, but it's more, I guess I'm sitting in the darkness here. The stuff, the paraffin that you spend the money on is well worth the money. I did a little calculation. I put a little note under one of the other videos that you could with one of these size cans, you could heat up over 120 cans of, if this was a buddy burner made up with paraffin wax and cardboard like this one here, you could actually, I would probably go with the bigger one yet, the one that's a little larger than that, but I have 3 sizes here. You could heat up at least 120 cans of soup, or you could heat up enough hot water 120 times for a cup of hot chocolate or more. Could be twice that many. But if you know because you've timed something or tried it or experimented with it, you know exactly an exact number of the minimum amount that you could produce from. Like if you've done the bread and you know how many loaves of bread you can make, or you've done the bread rolls and you know how many bread rolls you could make out of your 50-pound sack of flour, or you know how many cups of hot chocolate you could heat up with your little paraffin burner, you know how many hours your burner will burn because you tried it or because I told you and you believed me. The reason, I'll probably mention this in a different video, but the reason that I sit here in my living room day after day after day and come to you with facts and statistics and numbers and prices and how many of which does which, where, how, when, why kind of thing, is because if you make up the burners, or you even just buy the paraffin wax and put it on your shelf, and you've seen, you can, not very clearly again here, but you've heard the instructions from somebody who's done it, and I tell you that your buddy burner is going to last you somewhere between 6 hours and 15 hours, and you go to bed at night knowing that you have, 100 buddy burners in the closet, and you know that you're going to get a very minimum of 600 hours out of those 100 buddy burners, or if you have 10, and you know that you'll get at least 60 hours of heating, cooking fuel out of that, you're going to have an increased level of peace and confidence. And I think we could all use an increased level of peace and confidence. 7.5 minutes now. I think we could all use an increased level of peace and confidence in our world. And when our government tells us that there's 2 really big countries trying to take our electrical grid down, you can say, well, that's really kind of a scary thought, but I've got enough fuel that I can cook this or that or the other thing, or I can do 100 of this or 200 of that, or I have enough fuel to last me X number of months, or what have you. This video started being about seeds, but I think I'm going to have to change the name. So God bless your efforts to prepare. Make a list, work on your list, make some progress, and you will have an increased level of confidence and peace. God bless your efforts to prepare. Bye.